In this video, we're going to show how to use two of the latest modules we've added to YepCode. On one hand, executing code generated by LLMs in a secure and scalable environment. And on the other hand, creating tools to be used by MCP agents. We'll start with the agent's prompt that we're going to use. In this case, we'll be using Claude Desktop for all the execution. You'll be an agent that solves tasks through code generation and execution using YepCode Run. The steps will be: review what the user asks for, mention that this is a completely generic agent, identify the necessary operations, and make use of the environment variables already available in your YepCode account, because the code that is generated will be executed within the YepCode environment, where secrets or environment variables may already be predefined to manage communication with the systems we want to interact with. The agent must write the code, execute it, and also handle errors. We ask it to include detailed logs so that, in case of a failed execution, it can regenerate the code and try again. Additionally, we've created a predefined tool, also available through our MCP server, called the OpenAPI Exploration Tool. This tool allows an agent that needs to interact with a REST API and has its OpenAPI specification to retrieve that API's information. Why did we build this? Well, in the example, we're using the REST API from Factorial, which is an HR software. But we can see that its API is very extensive and has a lot of methods. In fact, here we have the JSON specification of the API. It's huge. We could add this to the agent's context, but it's way too much information and would consume a lot of tokens. It's not efficient and would reduce code accuracy. So we created this OpenAPI Exploration Tool, labeled as an MCP tool, and by simply configuring our MCP server in Claude, this tool becomes available. So what does this tool do? It takes an OpenAPI specification as input and, by default, returns the tags that this spec contains, just the tags and their description. Then, if you pass a tag, it tells you what operations exist under that tag. And finally, if you pass an operation, it returns the full payload: inputs, outputs, paths, security details, etc. This helps the agent retrieve exactly the information it needs when working with an API. Lastly, we say that it can break a task down into subtasks, and if a script fails, it should try again. So we've put the prompt into Claude and we see that the agent is ready. Then we say, okay, use the Factorial API and provide the spec to find out how many employees we have. The first thing it does is use the MCP tool. It doesn't generate code yet, just makes a call to the tool to explore what operations the API has. It returns all the operation tags and their descriptions. Next, it decides it needs information about the employee's operations, so it makes a new call with the employees tag, and we return all operations related to employees. Just the operations and methods, not the full details. Finally, it selects the operation it wants to use and makes another call to get its full details. At that point, we provide everything: payload, connection security, inputs, outputs, object schemas, etc. With that, it's ready to generate a script that uses the API precisely. In this case, it generates a script in JavaScript. It could have used Python. And we see that in the execution, we return all the logs. But here, there was an error. The agent says, okay, there was an error. I'm going to debug it. It generates another script and runs it. This time it realizes, the REST API returns a data object. It must have added more debug trace logs to the script. So it updates the script and re-executes it. Perfect. Now we can see it's returning the employee data, which is what we wanted. It had to iterate a bit, but it worked. We didn't interact at all. The agent retried and regenerated code on its own. Very cool. Now we say, create a time-off request for Elizabeth, and we give her email for the last week of June. Perfect. Now it uses the API Exploration Tool again to find operations related to absences. It doesn't need to request tags again. It has them from an earlier call. Then it determines which operation it needs. With the full operation spec for creating an absence, It first retrieves the employee ID of the worker, since we only gave the email. Technically, it could have done this all in one action: fetch the employee and create the absence. But it broke it down into steps. Then it looks for absence types to use in the request. Here, it executes the action to retrieve those types. Finally, it creates the script to request the absence for this employee. It says, "Perfect, it's been created." We go to Factorial and see that she now has that vacation week created. You might think this isn't much different from having an MCP server over our REST API, which would be more deterministic than this code generation. That might be true. But we believe this offers far more flexibility. We're not just a wrapper over the REST API. Look at the prompt we now give it. "Hey, that was great. Now can you create a table in Supabase and save the employee data in it?" Now we're introducing a new data source, which may require different libraries, and we don't give it any further instructions. I won't go into all the code because it had some errors, but it tried to resolve everything on its own. In the end, it wasn't able to create the table, not sure why, and asked, "Can you create the table manually and let me know when it's done?" So we did, and told it the table was ready. Then it ran another script and said, "Done, the employee info is now in Supabase." And if we go to Supabase, we see the employee table is there. This already shows more of the power of this code-based approach to task resolution. LLMs are only going to get smarter and more accurate. This would support endless use cases. Say a company joins Factorial and wants to import all their employees from an Excel file, Supabase, Google Sheets, whatever. You could just say, "Take the employees from here and use my REST API to create them." The possibilities are endless. And with how fast code generation is evolving, having this secure and scalable environment, plus the flexibility to create new tools, is going to help solve many real-world use cases. I hope you found this video interesting.